friends, and welcome to This Life Without Limits. I'm your host, Weston McWhorter, and on today's episode, I'm joined by an old friend from the advertising industry and the cycling world. Evan Fry and I met at the 2013 US National Cyclocross Championships in Boulder, Colorado. I was there promoting my brand Rouler, and he was there enjoying the week of racing, industry parties, and just out there supporting his homies. We met on top of a hill at Valmont Bike Park, where I was dressed up as like this crazed rooster, and he was just pretty stoked to see somebody that was excited about racing as he was. During the course of our conversation, we discuss Evan's long career in the commercial creative industry and his penchant for mentoring and teaching young designers and creatives, which eventually led to the founding of Ideas for Animals, which marries his love for big ideas and his pursuit of living a judgment-free creative life. Evan's one of those guys that I've been inspired by and admired since we met back in 2013 in the midst of mud, blood, bikes, and all kinds of fun in Boulder. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Evan, and let's get into it. All right, everybody, I would just like to welcome my friend Evan Fry to This Life Without Limits. Thanks for joining me, man.
No, it's my pleasure. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to see you. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. You and I met each other years ago, like in the bike world, and I have been, a fan of you personally and professionally for a lot of years, man. So I just wanted to say that, it's a real pleasure to have you on here.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I remember when I first saw you.
Yeah. So can you
cyclocross race with a flag? You had your Rouler flag.
That's right, man.
Remember?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up because
and you were wearing a chicken head. Not a real chicken head, thankfully.
That's right. I think we were standing on the top of the hill in Boulder with that gnarly off-camber that was like deteriorating as the week went on. And yeah, I was dressed up as Le Coq Mystérieux. That was kind of the mascot for Relay at the time. And I don't know who snapped the photo, but we were watching, I think, Justin Lindeen descend that little piece, and I'm waving that flag and you're behind me like, yeah. I still have that photograph in my hard drive, dude. That was pretty awesome.
That's killer. I realize I pronounced it wrong, so I'm not going to try to pronounce it again. I'm just going to mention it as the it that I pronounced wrong.
Yes, the cycling it. So maybe that's a good place to start, man, is to talk about, like, I mean, I think people who listen to this episode who know you or who don't know you would be really interested in, your creative path, because ultimately that's where we're going to end up in this conversation, is talking about Ideas for Animals and this new endeavor that you've got going on. But as someone who is a former creative director in the ad agency myself, I've always kind of like looked up to dudes who are doing like killer work on like the global agency level. And so I'm just kind of curious, because we've never actually really talked about this. Like, how did you sort of end up in that world? And, and I mean, if it was tied to bikes or not, I mean, we can talk about all that stuff, but I am definitely curious about how you ended up kind of in the advertising world and what lit you up about it.
I found one of my colleagues at one time called it the big leagues of advertising, which it's okay. It's okay to call it that. I was attracted to that through going to school of journalism, University of Oregon. I graduated in '92. And so there was a program specifically within the School of Journalism for advertising creation. They didn't even call it that. It was copywriting. I didn't know what it meant.
Right.
I didn't know what it meant at all when I went in. I just knew that I liked the show at the time called 30 Something.
Yeah.
And I was like, what do those guys do? Oh, that looks fun. So I chose that, and I don't mean to make it like a super long, drawn out story, but that's what sort of exposed me to the big leagues. I started taking classes at the University of Oregon and had great instructors, and the proximity to Portland and Wyden and Kennedy made a difference, I'm sure, through providing scale to what kind of job to get. I just knew that I wanted that level. Luckily, there was exposure to Wyden and Kennedy. Dan Wyden himself came down for a 72-hour intensive that I was lucky enough to be part of.
Wow.
Brought one of his star copywriters at the time, a guy named Jeff McGann, I'll never forget. And I just was enamored with how cool they seemed. So that kind of set the bar, you know, Wes. Like, I was like, that's what I thought it would have to be. Then I got out of school and realized that, oh, everybody wants in at that level. And I had a lot of insecurity at the time. I mean, just a ton. But my partner in school was a guy named Glenn Cole, and Glenn Cole, you know, Googleable guy, just a meteoric ad career. And so I had that comparison going on, which was vicious, because there was not even an internship at Wyden and Kennedy at the time. And he is just this, if you don't know Glenn Cole now has an agency called 72 and Sunny, which is extremely popular and successful. And before that, it was Wyden and Kennedy. And, you know, Glenn came out and just hounded Dan Wyden. He's like, you should start an internship program. You don't have one, you should start one, and it should be me. It should be the first one. So I had this comparison going on with him. There was a long time in the, you know, and I don't mean to sound disparaging, the advertising industry, though, is, in my opinion, you know, it's like 99% of it is mediocrity.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was just viciously judgmental of all that mediocrity. Yeah. And then there's this little upper crust. And I was in that mediocrity for 10 years, Portland and then San Francisco. Yeah. But always knowing somewhere that I could do it at that level. I had insecurity, but not, I knew I could do it with those guys, that level of creative copywriters and art directors. And I just knew it. So I never gave up. And I still tell students and mentees this now. Like, I was just sort of like, I always believed and still believe that if you want in a great place, whether you're a director or someone wanting to get into a really good, you know, etymology program as a scientist or whatever, prove it. Especially in our industry, if you can't get the attention of the decision makers with promoting yourself, then, so you know what I mean? It's like, we're paid to promote brands. Well, can you put that expertise toward getting attention for yourself? So I did that, and I got in at a place called Crispin Porter and Bogusky, and I started at the end of 2002. So I had not quite 10 years of that mediocrity, and then it was like on. Yeah. And it was, I'm still close with that guy, being Alex Bogusky. And I love him like a brother or uncle. Yeah. Just a really close friend, sort of soul connection that continues to evolve. But that was my shot, and that's how I got in at Crispin. And again, I'm skirting out a lot of the details and, you know, drudgery and wow, years of just, am I going to do this? Am I ever going to get in somewhere good? And that was my last ditch. It was this, you know, very concerted effort to get Alex's attention with some mailings. I was doing some pretty attention getting pieces of mail that they were anonymous, and I didn't know they were getting his attention until I did know, because I got a FedEx delivered to me that was like evidence bag of all the stuff I'd been sending, and somehow he tracked me down. And then it was like, send your book. And I said I had, and he said, send it again. He's like, oh yeah, I didn't like it. And he's like, I said, I know, that's why I'm doing all this other stuff. And so he's like, come for an interview. And then it was like 3 months later, I finally got a call, and he just goes, code word pineapple, call Veronica, tell her pineapple. And then it was just like, oh my God, I was in. Yeah. And so then it was like, you know, prove you can do it. You always thought you could, Evan, so do it. And and luckily I took 6 months to get some traction there, but hopefully I'm not too off the question or the prompt here, but I think that's
not at all.
Hopefully that answers you.
Yeah, not at all. And I think maybe just for a second, I kind of want to circle back to, those early days for any designers who are listening to this, and or I say designers, I mean creatives who are listening to this, who might be in that same early stage, either early stage career or still in school. Like, do you have a thought for them, or maybe a little piece of a little nugget of wisdom related to, I mean, a couple things. One is like that overcoming of that, sense of like imposter syndrome, right? Or comparison. And then, an impactful strategy. Like, what are you looking for in young creatives, um, in terms of, them progressing to the next level of their career?
Yeah, good questions. I think getting over the imposter syndrome or insecurities, first of all, as I'm coming to learn more and more, the older I get, the more I focus on these kinds of things. First of all, it would be become aware that you have that, become aware that you have that tendency, and really be with it. And I know that's kind of woo-woo language, but what I mean is just own it. Know that you have that tendency to doubt yourself or whatever it may be called, so that you can work with it, so that you can kind of create a relationship with it. And that is not to say become like some kind of, self-fulfilling, create more of it kind of relationship, but more of a like, I see you. It's not real, but I'm not going to spiritually bypass this energy. I'm going to like, yeah, I've got a tendency to be blank.
Mm-hmm.
And then overcome it. Then it's like saying, okay, no, but there's another side too here that's somewhere in there, that's confident, that's self-assured, capital S self, obviously, or ideally, I should say. And it's the old adage. It's an old adage for a reason: persevere, don't give up. If you really do believe that you've got what it takes to do it at that level. And what does that level mean? I've used the phrase already a few times, big leagues and stuff, but that doesn't matter. If you're in with good people and you're happy doing what you're doing, it can be obscure, it can be a one-man band like I've got now. It doesn't really matter, but I also understand that it can matter. It sure did for me. So persevering. I mean, I remember the evening that I got home after working out, that I literally got to go to Crispin Porter, because I remember just coming home and tracking into my journals and things I was doing and just being like, I mean, I didn't even really know how the word was spelled then, but I'd heard it a lot. Perseverance. I was like, it just came to me like, it is about that, and who cares if later maybe you realize that it's some kind of judgmental term here, superficial or not for you or not, whatever it might be. At the time, it was all I cared about. And so, that may be some advice that I'm sure I would give, is be like, yeah, realize those things that might be holding you back, some of your personal challenges. Create a healthy environment with that. And I do think it starts with calling it out, knowing that you've got it, and then accepting that. I'm like, yeah, I've got this tendency. And then how can you kind of, through acceptance, come to like not let it become you, so you don't identify with it too much.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, that's beautiful, man. And I think that, it's been a long time since I've been in that environment. And I feel like, what I've seen is like the career trajectories these days really are a lot different than they were 10 years ago, even, where you would come out of either university or design school or ad school or something like that, and, potentially jump right into a career with either, a corporate brand or into an agency. Maybe it's local, maybe it's regional, or if you're lucky, national or global. But nowadays it seems like there's a lot of paths for individuals, like creative individuals who, are committed, who have that perseverance to, kind of build their own brand. And I'm going to say this to you, and you may think it's a little weird, but like, I feel like that's kind of what you've done in the long run, is like create this personal brand for yourself, whether that was intentional or otherwise. And it just seems like, there's a variety of different paths to make it these days.
That is for sure, man. I mean, right before the pandemic hit, I had launched something called Flying Nautilus Creative Mentorship.
I
And I
remember
still
that.
do it, but I folded it into IFA. And there for a long time, the timing was like exquisite because it hit for the pandemic, and a post on LinkedIn was all it took, and occasional reminders. And I bring that up because I got to have a lot of Zooms with young creatives, a lot, definitely over 100.
Yeah.
It was always free. I bring it up though because I got a glimpse at how different it is. And so when you say many paths, absolutely, right? So, but my comfort zone is like what I know, the path that I went. And I have a certain degree of like judgment around, what's legit, right? To get in somewhere and to then make it and last and not get canned.
Yeah.
And but that's not at all necessarily relevant anymore. And it doesn't matter. There's so many examples of people who, again, if you're happy doing it, killer. Like that's all that there is. But yeah, there's so many paths now that as far as me, like I think over time, it's nice to hear that. I would never take that the wrong way. That's really cool. I think maybe it's just from, if I look at my arc now in 2015, there was a big change. In 2009, before that, there was a big change too. I started my own place with two partners. I wasn't really a founder. They were founders, and I was chief creative officer. But we were looked at like a three-headed leadership entity, and I learned a lot from that. And so that got me out of the Crispin thing, and it had a lot of press behind it in the industry. So that could be part of it. And then I ask him like why that could happen, but I can see it now that you prompted me that way. Like there was that, and then there is, and my air conditioner kicked on. So hopefully that audio is not going to
We're
screw
still
us
good,
too
man.
much.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful.
Okay.
But wait a minute.
So there was that.
Your air conditioning kicked on. Where are you in Arizona still?
I live in Tucson, Arizona.
Okay,
now.
yeah. I was like, because it's like 70 degrees outside here in Maryland today. So I'm like, dang, it must be.
Oh yeah. I live in the Sonoran Desert.
Yeah, man, getting that AC bill going soon.
Oh, it's been already.
Yeah.
Well, I'm distracted by this, but you let me know if you think it's going to be an audio thing. But
yeah, no, we're good, man.
So, but anyway, with that change in 09, and then I went back to Crispin for 3 years, and then in 2015 I left again, and I started Fry. I just called it Fry, and I luckily had a lot of cycling clients because that's kind of full circle to our way we started. I was really in that world.
Yeah.
So now with Ideas for Animals starting this year, I can kind of see how that could happen. And I guess maybe that's kind of the way it goes. And I think if there's a common thread through different jobs, obviously it's going to be who you are.
Sure.
So yeah.
That's beautiful, man. So I was going to talk about, this idea of building brands because, there's, I think, some misconceptions, certainly on the client side sometimes, about what a brand is, right? Is a brand a logo? Is a brand something other than that? A lot of people think that's it, right? And I've always been of the mind that, the brand is really the story that is trying to be conveyed to people for whatever outcome that organization or individual might be trying to might desire to get across, and so I'm curious how that lands for you, especially as someone who is a writer, is a storyteller. Does that resonate with you, this idea of brands being stories?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I like to think of a brand as like multifaceted and like I think I'm no strategist. I'm no like anthropologist. I don't pretend to be, but when you're in the leadership level of advertising, you do get to be in a lot of meetings that cross disciplines and hear a lot of smart people talk about it. And I was, privy to, I guess, the notion of brands as the way we relate to them now, or culture relates to them more like people, and they have maybe the same expectations expectations, or maybe even more, you know, because like probably less apt to forgive a brand.
Yeah.
Because you maybe assume it should be perfect or something. It's not human, but to relate to them like that. And yeah, what is a relationship? But you know, probably unless you're pretty close to vapor enlightenment level, you're going to be bringing the past to everything.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, it's story. That's
Yeah.
story. Yeah, I think so. I think, yeah, brands, it's tough, you know, like I have a lot of judgment of that term being applied
Uh-huh.
to a person.
Sure.
I can admit that, like, but then again, like, you know, I chose what I wore today. I chose to wear this.
Uh-huh.
I chose the framing of, I mean, I'm all
Yeah.
about aesthetics and things, and
Uh-huh.
not that brands are aesthetics, but that's a huge part of it.
For sure.
I love that stuff, you know, I love, even though I say I judge it, I love it. So again, it's that awareness piece. Like I've got a lot of the things that I, you know, would say are maybe superficial or maybe this or that. Those are my tendencies. And
Yeah.
but yeah, I think brands are, I mean, they're so ubiquitously woven into like modern privileged culture. Like I don't even think I personally can't. I appreciate when they know who they are and they can like occupy a space in my life, and when the logo doesn't piss me off. You know, I think that's cool. I still look at the Apple logo and yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'd rather see that than a Windows logo.
Okay, so I remember the big, you remember that big kerfuffle around Pepsi's redesign?
You know, vaguely.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I just remember, I feel like I was sitting at an AIGA like national design conference the year that came out, and there was a big like portion of the conference that was dedicated to being like, doesn't that just look like kind of a person who's drank too much soda, like the belly peeking through
Oh
the
man.
shirt and the jeans? And we were like, yeah, that was one I can't look at and not think that now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so amazing, isn't it? Yeah, brands are put to a really high standard and so much scrutiny.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
you know, I think that's just, yeah. And in some ways that's really good. And all of it for sure is something to be accepted. I mean, I think it's just like it's just the way things are going, you know, like
Yeah, yeah.
I've been thinking of like a lot about AI recently, which
Uh-huh.
is a similar thing with regard to like I understand the resistance and fear around it completely. I
Mm-hmm.
totally, of course, can understand that, but at the same time,
From a creative
use your
perspective.
creativity.
Yeah, I was just going to say from a creative perspective or from it's going to take over the world perspective.
I just hear like things around like, you know, people resisting it, whether that's like a leadership team, like, hey, let's pause it, or a writer's strike, or, you know, little bits on LinkedIn of people. But it's just a matter of like, you know, same could be said for desktop publishing and
Yeah,
photography. And there's been so many disruptions. So use your creativity to figure out a way to like leverage it.
yeah,
I just think that like, yeah, it's just about accepting however it's going to go. Like, so with brands, again, like I sometimes am just like people, you know, who focus on them trying to be a certain way or holding brands to a certain standard. It's like, okay, I get that. And part of me resists that, but other part of me is like, that's fine. That's just the way it goes. So you're signing up to be that now if you're a brand, and especially a highly visible one.
yeah. I mean, I think
So,
a
you know,
great example, like kind of in the modern discussion right now, is Bud Light using, that trans spokesperson to promote their brand and having like a lot of, backlash and fallout around that, which I thought was just like, I mean, it's very telling of where we are kind of culturally and societally right now, but to your point, it's kind of like, of course, like what's the big deal?
yeah,
Yeah.
yep, I totally agree.
Yeah. So bikes, man. Have you always, I mean, again, we sort of met on a hill cheering on cyclocross racers, but have you, I mean, as sports and athletics and things like that, has it been part of your life for a long time?
Bikes for sure. I mean, I mean, I'll just cut right to like, so I've been through a lot of intentional change and challenging how I used to identify, and in the last coming up on 5 solid years. And a big part of that was really looking at my relationship to riding bikes and racing and
Mm.
social media, sort of like persona around it. And but it's interwoven with my career too, from 2015 still. Like I said, a lot of my clients as a freelance, like creative little agency, have been cycling. So, but as far as to your point, yeah, I mean, I was the kid who wouldn't get off his bike and wanted, attention for that.
Mhm.
Um, and yes, BMX.
Yeah.
We couldn't afford really what I wanted, so I always had kind of these like cobbled together Franken bikes that would make do. And we lived rurally, so
Yeah.
my friends did too. But then then you'd see the kid with the hot PK Ripper or Mongoose,
Yeah.
and it'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, I really wish I had that bike. And but so from early days, 6 years old on through just being muddy and dirty all the time,
Yeah.
um, through and then even into like, you know, close to adult sized. I had, then I did have a mongoose, and then I
Yeah.
was using laid back seat posts and longer, like pushing my bars forward and stuff. But
Mhm.
never really raced it or anything. But yeah, it's always cycling. There was in high school, there was a little football
Yeah.
period there. Then just my body wasn't happy with a couple of those things, and so I
Yeah.
let that go. Then I got way into cars. I got way into building engines
Uh-huh.
and high performance, like porting of heads, and learning a
Mhm.
lot about that, and drag racing. I was full on drag race guy
Wow.
in
Wow.
high school.
Yeah.
There was even like yeah, it was a sport. It was
Yeah.
at our high school. So I got into that. But then, and then, after college, moved to Portland, Oregon, and I had gotten my first mountain bike before
Mhm.
that, for my sophomore year, junior year.
Yeah.
And it was a legit mountain bike. This is 1990.
Yeah.
So then it was kind of on, because I just brought some like the love of BMX to that, and then just started getting into that big
Yeah.
time. But and then in Miami for Crispin, there was an identified need from Alex's point of view, I think, Alex Pogusky's point of view, which was like, hey, this kid needs something to do, because I was just burning it. And so
Yeah.
motocross was the thing in Miami. And
Oh,
so
wow.
if Alex thought it was cool and he invited me to do it, I would have done whatever it was, because I
Right.
just looked up to him so much. And so I got way into motocross. I had two different dirt bikes, and we'd go to the track every weekend. And then I built a supermoto. And so I
Yeah.
was way into that, because in Miami, I mean, yes, there's a mountain bike scene, but there's no
Sure.
slopes. I mean, it's
There are
not
no
the same.
mountains in Miami. Yeah.
It's not. It wasn't for me, but I was riding road bikes too. So, but then when I moved to Boulder in 2006, it became like
Yeah.
um, a major focus. And then it didn't stop until, yeah, 2018. And through all that, there was a period of um, competing
Sure.
cyclocross.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I got way into that. My
Yeah.
goal was to become a Masters Cat 2,
Yeah.
and I did. And then I was like, thank God I can stop, because it was too brutal. I mean, it's like a
Yeah.
full-time job, and I really wanted to be that guy. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
yeah. And then after that,
No, go ahead, bud.
go ahead. Oh no, after that, then it was like enduro. So
Mhm.
my best friend who I've traveled with and done lots of adventures with. I didn't get the cyclocross thing at all, and he's like, "Yeah, you're ready to hang that up? Okay, let's have fun
Yeah.
again." So I was always better at handling than I was at being a big engine.
Mhm.
So like in cyclocross, the muddier races and stuff. So that can be like an egoic badge, like, oh, I'm a good bike handler, but I
Sure.
just was. And
Yeah.
so that was my thing with mountain biking too, is that's where I excelled. I liked really technical descents. And so he's like, let's try an enduro. Well, of course, what enduro do we try? The hardest one in the world, the Trans BC enduro, 6 day enduro.
Wow.
Got into that, and then it was on. So I started racing enduro for 3 years, and never really good, but I could survive.
Sure.
And so got way into that. But then just to kind of give it a full glimpse and kind of come back to how I started this answer. In the last few years, I've really let go. I mean, I had at one point like just a whole quiver of bikes, and not bikes just collecting dust. I mean, I was riding the road. I was an ambassador for Rafa for 2 years. This is when I was racing cyclocross. So I had training bike, race bike, pit bike. I had a downhill bike. I had an enduro bike. I had an XC mountain bike. I had all these bikes, and then I sold them all. I went through a period in the last 5 years where I just really chucked those kinds of identities, and just to kind of get to the, like, why am I doing this? And I realized that I was pretty easily, once I started to get honest, that I was riding bikes to be noticed. It was like, it was an attention device more than anything. I didn't really love it. I didn't really love it. And then, so, I still have a bike. I'm affiliated with Mosaic Cycles in Boulder, Colorado. So I have a really sweet gravel bike, a Mosaic, and I have a really good all-around mountain bike, Transition Sentinel. But I'm not really riding them. I started walking. But throughout the whole thing, this may be a long-winded answer, but yes, athletics. I mean, I'm one of those people, and like it's definitely part of the day in some way. It's some movement. And in the last 6 months, I've taken up this crazy gym here in Tucson called the Ruckus Room. Shout out to the Ruckus Room. Super fun. It's like, it's just super hardcore, and I love it. But at my age now, I'm like, well, a couple days of that a week is about as much as my body wants, which is fine too. There's a letting go of all this kinds of like achievement based things lately. And that's kind of a broader topic that's very interesting to me. Is like, I think it takes a lot of courage to be open to change, and to be open to like not hanging on to other identities or other things that we used to be. And I think it's hard, and I think that for me, cycling is right in there as like a real big symbol of that.
I mean, I can 100% relate. As there were some really, really great times and memories that I have in that sport and in that world. And I've been racing bikes since I was 13, and I'm 50 now, and, all the way up to, building my own bikes, having my own brand, having my own shop, all of this, building a community in New Orleans, and putting on a big cross series down there in Louisiana and Mississippi. Like, if I could do it, I mean, I guess, one day when I was little, I was aspiring to like ride the Tour de France. That didn't work out. Right. But I kind of did the next best thing, which was create this brand that was all about adventure. And, of course we were like very much looked at Rafa as like our, kind of like North Star or like aspiration, And yeah, man, I mean, I also have been going through, like, after all the fallout of Rouler closing back in 2018, really going through that process of like, who am I without this as an identity, and especially because my son, who's 15, he's really into cross. He's kind of like flirting with mountain biking a little bit. And, we had a very candid conversation about, what, like, how he wants that to look in his life. Like, does he want to go out and chase results, or does he want to be fit enough to just go and like do all the regional races in the mid-Atlantic states, which is, every bit as like active and competitive as like the Northwest, maybe more so.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he told me flat out, he's like, I want to have fun with this, man. Like, if results come, dope. If not, I just want to have fun with it and like hang out with my friends. And I'm like, I can support that 100%, so,
I mean, how awesome to have that's so awesome to have a conversation like that. And he's lucky to have you with the perspective and lens you have, and prompting that kind of, like, let's be intentional about this, and whatever it is fine. But let's know so we can go into it and approach it that way.
100%, man. And I mean, he's also, I mean, we went to nationals up in Hartford back in December, and he brought along his sister's digital camera with him because he just wanted to take some pictures. And I ended up getting him a a media pass so he could like, get in the chute and see like shoot all the elite riders coming through the finish line. And I mean, he ate that shit up and has actually like, I mean, he has a great natural talent for photography and just a great eye. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't ever want to say to him, you need to pick one thing to do, right? It's like, I want you to live a whole, full, beautiful, expansive life. I say the same thing to my daughter, it's just really like, yeah, life's too short to try and like hone in on, one specific thing. Just like live the shit out of it as best you can.
Mm.
That's my
Yeah, I
philosophy.
used to be like that. Now it's like, yeah, I'm so much more interested now. This is very new for me in the last year of like achievement,
Mm,
personally. Just like,
mm,
man, I don't know that life is short, and
mm,
I think the way I kind of hope it is. Like
mm.
like I'm very, very interested in using this crazy world that we choose to incarnate in as the way to like learn whatever I need to learn so that
Yeah.
eternity is more
Uh-huh.
possible.
Uh-huh.
So that's obviously teasing a huge topic that I actually really don't want to get too into, but it's I'm just very sensitive now that, and it's not I'm not it sounds judgmental, it sounds a bit like elitist perhaps, uh, but just when I hear notions of like give it all you got and
Mhm,
milk this life, and
mhm.
I'm just like, oh, I really, it almost hurts to hear that
Yeah.
because it suggests a transactional
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
ness to
Yeah.
life of like, if we achieve, then we are
Yeah.
of value. And that's not what you meant. I get that.
Sure.
I know that there's a lot of facets to, you know, going for it in life in this material realm. Yes. I mean, we are here too, as Ram Dass says, you got to remember your zip code. Don't
Hmm.
try to transcend and spiritually bypass and act like we're not. We're here.
Right.
If you're here, you're here, and if you're here, you're just as flawed and as in need of learning some
Yeah.
big lessons or whatever they may be for you as anyone else.
Yeah.
So to try to act like I'm not part of that is ridiculous. But at
Yeah.
the same time, yeah, right lately I'm just very much like I find so much. I'm now enamored with folks who really do appear comfortable in their own skin
Yeah.
because I was never that way, and
Mhm.
that's a goal. Like literally, that's my goal now is to be wow. Like there is no there's no way that like something that I do could really impact my
Mhm.
value as like part of
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Uh, and really, actually, the more I can let go of that
Mhm.
expectation and be present for however a fellow brother or sister needs to show up, and is so much more valuable. Like I will now seek out ways of just interacting so that so that I can be, I don't know, be shown something
Sure.
like just be there.
Yeah. Present, curious.
I'm rambling,
Yeah.
rambling
No,
alert,
not at
big
all,
time.
man. So here's what my invitation is that we just sort of put a pin in that in a future episode. We'll just hit record and we'll just go off
Yeah,
because
that would be
I'm,
great. That's
I'm,
probably a good idea.
yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated by that stuff too. And I think from a parenting perspective, like that's not really how I was raised, and so in my own
Me
healing
neither.
journey, my own path, I'm trying to parent in the way that I needed, right? Or that I desired. And um and to try and just, hold a lot of space and a lot of like suspend expectations, suspend um judgment. And it is easier said than done because there's still that like, you know, um childhood part of me, or that, much of my life that was just kind of spent sleepwalking, that is still in there, and I'm trying to tease it out every day to kind of clean it up, but um children are my kids are a great mirror for me, and just, really like lucky to have the opportunity to kind of shepherd them through this, incarnation for a while, you know.
Man, I mean, they were lucky to have you as well.
Thanks,
They
man.
chose a good one.
Uh-huh. Yeah, man. So I want to circle back. Well, I want to talk about IFA for a little while, man. So, but before we do that, I mean, you mentioned Alex a couple of times, and I'm curious if you can recall, like, I was going to say the best piece of advice he ever gave you, or maybe just like a salient nugget of wisdom that he dropped on you that might have stuck around for a while.
There's so many. I mean, I don't know. One time we were on our way to Burger King. This will be a great segue to IFA because I want to
Okay.
be absolutely clear. And if no one reads anymore, but if you do, I own it from the gun throughout IFA that I absolutely haven't been vegan my whole life.
Fair enough.
And I never even thought about it, man. For most of it, I never even thought about it, which that's culture. We don't think about it. And if whatever, we were on our way to
Another
Burger
topic
King.
for another time. Yeah.
It is probably. We were on our way to Burger King, me and him in his Viper, Dodge
Okay.
Viper. And
Wow.
we were going to present a big budget TV
Yeah.
campaign. And before we go in, he goes, "Do you know what a ninja is?" And I was like, "Well, of course I know what a ninja is." We're sitting in his Viper in the parking lot at Burger King headquarters. And I'm like, "Yeah." So, well, no, what is it? And I answer, he's like, "No, the whole reason with ninjas, what they did is they basically got to the point where they were okay with death before the battle." So he's like, "So that's what this is today. Be a ninja. Like, it's okay if they don't buy this, whatever." And I was like, wow, like, okay, that's crazy, but I love shit like that. And so, then I go in there and there we are, and we're presenting to the CEO, not the CMO, the CEO of Burger King. And this was a song. And he's like, "Sing it." And I'm like presenting it. And he's like, "No, sing it." He interrupts me. He's like, "Sing it." And I'm like, thank God he reminded me or put that nugget of ninja in there
Yeah.
before we went in. Cause I was like, I had just enough like, fuck it, in mind to like send it and go for it and sing this song. It's
Yeah.
about a hamburger.
Oh my God.
But he loves stuff like that. Like he would read, yeah. He's, I'm the one who brought him up. Like he
Yeah.
would cringe at having his name, probably have his name associated with advertising, or he would probably say, "No, I don't. I accept everything," because he's very much on a new path now.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
that guy he's an amazing incarnated human. He's so capable.
Yeah.
He's so smart. He was always, and I started to notice this pattern with me in my relationship with him at work, or like about 2 years in or so, of like, oh man, sometimes it takes, I consider myself pretty smart, I guess, sharp, intuitive,
Mhm,
these
mhm.
whatever. But man, he would say things and it would take me some like periods of time then it would finally click later. Like, oh, that's what he meant.
Yeah.
And so that can be kind of on a macro or micro level. Like he's always ahead. He's just really, really smart.
Yeah.
Um, and he just kind of knew the things to say. Like he's always a few steps ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember the song?
But yeah, it was based on Big Rock Candy Mountain. So it's still on my portfolio, although now it's under I put everything underneath a line that has to do with exploiting animals that I chose to be in my portfolio. I couldn't completely expunge my portfolio side of animal exploitive work
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
yet, because I'm still like, I still think I need money in this world. So as long as I think I need money, then I do.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be closed off from opportunity, but
Yeah. When
that'll
you
change
started,
too. That'll
yeah.
change too.
Yeah. When you started this story, I literally thought you were on the way to get a Whopper, but you were on the way to sell a Whopper.
Yeah.
Did you
On
guys
our
get the
way to
gig?
sell it.
Did you get the gig?
Yeah, we had him as AOR at the time too, but it was
Oh
just about
shit.
every time there was a creative brief for a new launch, and this was
Mhm.
for a new burger. It was every team competing to
Yeah.
get the work in the meeting.
Yeah.
pretty much every team, or maybe at least 5 teams.
Yeah.
And I had the lead, my partner and I had the lead campaign. And so he's like, come. And he was always testing too, which is beautiful. So this was the first time he was like, I want to see if you can present in front of a client. I had done it for 10 years before
Sure.
Crispin, but at
Sure.
Crispin, it was always like everything was. I mean, one time we were pitching Miller genuine draft.
Mm-hmm.
And I had kind of like was one of the teams inside on the pitch with all the teams working on it that kind of rose up and had more of the work in the meeting.
Yeah.
And I think he was like, can this guy be in front of a client? We literally flew in a private plane to Wisconsin to do this. We're there. I'm thinking, okay, I'm there. It's Alex, it's Andrew, it's the top account guy, and me. I'm in. We get there. He looks at me. We're setting up for the meeting. He looks at me and he just goes, watch and learn, which sounds douchey as hell,
Uh-huh.
but I didn't say a thing. I thought I was going to go in presenting campaigns and do, nope. He's like, just watch how it goes.
Wow.
There was so much learning there. It was, I mean, it really was a golden age of advertising, and
Yeah.
they were like right in their top 5.
Yeah.
I learned so much, and luckily it's transferable. It's not
Yeah.
just about the ad game.
Absolutely, man. I mean, yeah, absolutely. So I'm assuming that the segue piece that you alluded to earlier was the ninja story. Be prepared to die before you go into battle, as like this little segue into
I was
IFA.
actually meaning like now here I am with this thing called Ideas for Animals, and that Ideas for Animals came up because in the last 5 years being a vegan, I was just like really horrified, horrified. The more I learned about like really what it takes to fuel a society that thinks it needs to eat animals to live and consume and exploit them.
Yeah.
And then those words right there just sound so incredibly judgmental and superior. And so I learned as much as I could. Once I realized I had this penchant to sort of teach it, and there's a really amazing program called the Main Street Vegan Academy, and I went through that curriculum, and then I also realized that the one thing that to me clanks with all education / activism around animal exploitation is being judgmental about it. I mean, and so I've been shifting that, but I in basically February of 2022, I was like, okay, I will no longer, as a freelance advertising creative, I will no longer work on anything that exploits animals. So I claimed that on the top of my website. And at the same time, I was like, okay, I want to do more.
Yeah.
So I came up with a guy I work with a lot, Jay Farrakane, who you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
I named it Ideas for Animals, and we did the design and stuff. And then in the process of the year of 2022, most of that year, I was wrestling with that whole thing. Okay, yeah, I want to do this. If nothing else, it'll just be a new name for my freelance LLC. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I want to bring it to life in a way that allows me to be a creative platform. And what I mean by that is just, I didn't know what I'd want to do with it necessarily. I would like to maybe, wield my like commercial skill set and work with clients in a sort of an ideation capacity that I'm used to doing. That's fine. Again, I still think I need money, so I do. So
Sure.
that would be cool. But I also wanted it to just be something that could be fun. So whether that would be videos or mailings or whatever. And I described this sort of on the webpage home video. So I don't need to say it here, but that's what I meant about the segues. Like, actually, I used to work on all sorts of things that you couldn't get more exploitative than Burger King.
Yeah.
Compared to like what I believe now.
Yeah. So, I mean, are you, and maybe this is going to come out the wrong way, but I mean, are you looking, and you may not be looking for work, but I'm just going to say, are you looking for work that helps companies transition away? Or are you specifically looking for clients that are like they've already made that commitment to ethical practices in their business?
Well,
Or
on
both?
this facet of it,
Yeah.
Wes,
Yeah.
it's either. If
Okay.
Because look, I'm somebody who had to like baby steps my way. I was a vegetarian for 10 years with my ex-wife. That was amazing. And that was baby steps. And then so and again, I'm learning so much this year and the end of 2022 around just how incredibly counterproductive judgment is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's insanely counterproductive. And in fact, the whole activism realm,
Yeah.
anything that's anything, at whatever topic it is, has it wrong.
Yeah.
It has it completely wrong. Now I know that for some people that wakes them up and that's cool, but not from my lens. So I couldn't have that stance and say that there was a client again with if that facet of IFA that said, hey, hey, like, would you help us launch a vegan breakfast sandwich? I'd be like, yes, absolutely, because that's more important than anything, like,
Yeah.
is to kind of normalize it, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, right. But I will tell you that like it's like again, I just knew I needed to launch it, so I launched it right around the beginning of spring.
Yeah.
So just a couple months ago, really now, and I just because then I knew I would find it again. Back to what I kind of said about like I don't want to I don't want it to be transactional. Like you gotta do to be valuable.
Yeah.
So I knew that if it was just out and it was something that if it turned me on, I would find what was fun for me. It's very important to me to like for it to be fun. And so now I'm holding myself to putting an idea out a week. And that's the core of Ideas for Animals is ideas that would help animals.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like I have open source ideas on there, and I want to add one every week. And old me, old like Crispin trained me to be like one a week,
Yeah.
do one an hour.
Right.
Like, what are you talking about? You lazy like and no, I'm
Yeah.
doing one a week,
Yeah.
and we'll see. And that is actually something I'm super fascinated by right now. Is what makes something successful?
Mm-hmm.
What makes something real?
Mm-hmm.
So if I put an idea out there, and it's not even out there, it doesn't have to be written about, coded into a website, whatever. Is that maybe real enough? So I mean, so to answer your question, absolutely, I'm open to working with brands that aren't fully there. I'm
Yeah.
open to working with brands that are. I'm open to not ever working with a brand and
Yeah.
just writing posters that no one ever reads. I'm open to just making shirts. I really am,
Yeah.
because here's the crux, right? This is what's making me, this is filling me with like an unexpected, like, whoa. I work out of a little community workspace that's here in Tucson called La Suprema.
Yeah.
And I chose it because I like to work among people, even though I need a lot of focus when I work. Some people maybe will know that. That's why I have a collection of headphones.
Yeah.
But still, it's so much better for me. So anyway, it's like a great way for me to like walk the talk rather of not judging. So there I am. I mean, and this is a Latin culture down here, and man, that's like meat and dairy ahoy, right? So there I am, and it's a little community of really amazing, cool people, and I'm the vegan. And I'm like, okay, but I don't talk about it, and I don't go to the group lunches, and I just don't, and I don't do it like, I'm not gonna go
Yeah. Yeah.
protest. I do it out of just like, it's better for me to just, and yet I now hear rumblings of people going like, you know, because I don't hide it either. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like I'm there working and they can see my monitor, what I'm working on and whatever. But I hear rumblings now of like people like, oh, I'm going plant-based or I'm doing this. And I'm not saying it's me,
Yeah.
but it's an influence. And I think that if I were out there going like, and judging and shooting and frowning at people for putting milk in their coffee and going like these mini moves, what kind of suffering each one of these is, and that would do the opposite. So, and yesterday I'm walking around my neighborhood and there's a guy who used to be at Lost From, and he comes up and he goes, "Hey, Evan, what's up?" And we chatted a little bit. And I get home and there was a text from him and he said, and we've never even talked about it. And he said, "I just wanted you to know that in the last month, I've cut my meat consumption by 50%. And he added in there, that he's cut his alcohol consumption too, because I'm sober,
Yeah.
coming up on 5 years. And it's a long story there. Another pin in it topic.
Yes. Perfect.
But I was like realizing, and I'm connecting these dots. I'm like, I think that's very important. I think that it's very important just to not, though absolutely it is counterproductive I call it like shooting on people. It's just so toxic.
Yeah.
It's also just important to be, and if asked, have good answers.
Yeah.
And if someone's curious, be there as like a bit of a coach. I am a certified vegan lifestyle coach and educator.
Yeah.
That is an accredited thing that I have under my belt now.
Yeah.
But really what that is it's just a way to be a little more confident if someone does ask. And the real work of it is to forgive everything. And I mean everything, not someone who does something.
Yeah.
Forgive yourself, forgive this world that seems to have forgive it all, because that's the key to all of the learning. We're not gonna, if we're holding and like seeing anything else out there as a vilified other, that's like, and I'm talking deep stuff again that said we would pin, but anyway, crossing a lot of topics here, going way off into the weeds, but
no, I mean, I think that's beautiful.
It's such a learning.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, like if the common thread through all of this is, living a life that is creative throughout in various types of incarnations, which you've done, which, I've managed to do thus far as well. That idea of suspending judgment and forgiveness for all is huge, dude. Cause like it unlocks, it just allows you to sort of lay down so many like cognitive burdens that are just, it's noise, right? And allows you to sort of pierce through all that noise and get to the signal of like deep meaning and purpose in life, which, I mean,
it's so noisy we can't even hear it. You know what I mean?
Man.
Like it's just so pervasive. I mean, judgment is a huge topic. Like it's also discernment, and we couldn't get around if we don't judge like, oh, the edge of a cliff and where the road stops. Like we need judgment, but yeah, obviously where area we're talking about is like, but it's just so ubiquitous, and it's I'm speaking for myself. So it's, I mean, one thing I also say just to like, I feel like I want to share is the overarching thing with any identity. So it's like, it's just, we got to be we all need to be, the invitation is to be careful and to be curious about any identification. So, because it's just a great way to keep separation. Oh, I'm Republican or I'm Democrat. So you're an other. And boy, is veganism hugely in that realm. And I did an idea of the week recently, which was just like, let's do a campaign that's about like trying to encourage vegans to be cooler. Because why do we do it? Well, I want to do it because there's 3 legs of the stool to veganism, probably 4. Either health, which is huge and it's scientific papers galore, environment, which is huge and scientific papers galore on the number one thing you can do as an individual, and then animal suffering, animal welfare. If you come into veganism because of that lens, caring for the animals, caring for the beings that you connect with, you're never going to cheat. You're never going to go off, because like, it's just, you could even get sick and you'd stay on it. So you're in, and that's the lens I came through. But actually you'll find that you're healthier than ever. But the point is, it's so easy to want it so badly when you come in from that lens, right? And to want it so badly for everyone to be a certain way. And yet it will just flip it the other way. And I understand the passion behind it big time, but it's so important to resist that urge to judge and it just is such a turnoff. It's so counterproductive. I'm repeating myself, but it's just so important. And I'm really fascinated about that lens of it. And I think that's why it's just like, I just want to do things that like put out there, and so like Ideas for Animals is also really open to like it not being super connected to animal welfare. It's just like when we feel better, when we're heard and felt and we're seen, like all those things as people too, and
Yeah.
we heal and we become more aware of our impacts and how connected we are,
Yeah.
you're a lot less apt to ignore your impacts.
Yeah.
And that goes to like how we relate with our neighbor and how we relate with our domestic pet and how we relate to a food chain
Yeah.
or, you know, a materials chain.
Yeah.
So really, do you go right after the symptom or do you go for more of the root thing?
Yeah.
And either way, it's all cool because this is just a giant illusion. That's what they say. And I'm
Yeah.
lucky enough to be naive enough to believe that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man. So listen, I want to be respectful of your time because I know you got something here in about 20 minutes you got to get into, but I want to ask you one more question. And that is, what are you most proud of right now?
I gotta say, I think I'm most proud of just noting when I personally, whether it has to do with being vegan or anything else, noting when I'm resistant
Yeah.
and judging somebody and able to notice it before damage is created.
Yeah.
You know, and again, and then just come back to like a peaceful state of, man, like it's really working. This practice is really working. And the more that I can be peaceful and
Mhm.
open, and again, that some of that clutter, so that I can be more of a channel for healing, for love. I mean, as woo-woo as that can sound for people, like that's so incredibly important.
Mhm.
And so that's what I'm most proud of now. Like it hit me today on my morning walk. It's like I still compare. Oh my gosh, I have so many friends still in the industry,
Mhm.
so many friends still racing bikes, so many like director friends or executive creative director friends or whatever it may be, celebrities, whatever's you doing
Yeah.
your podcast. Like it's all these, and I've really brought it in, you know. So
Mhm.
that comparison's going, and it hit me today. Like, yeah, and I really value just doing less damage.
Mhm.
Like, you know, like I'm really proud of like taking a giant time out
Yeah.
and creating enough space in my life and knowing like, okay, hey, yeah, I can be a high achieving individual and I can be like a high output guy, but for me,
Mhm.
that has classically come with an overwhelm that because it's not my comfort zone
Right.
that I protect with basically like stepping on people on a furrowed brow and like driving forward and missing the point and like
Mhm.
there's a lot of like collateral damage.
Mhm.
So for me, it's been like, okay, I do see a lot of people have a comfort zone with high achievement where they're still really showing up good and kind in the world. But for me, that was not the equation.
Yeah.
So I had to strip it way the hell back.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky enough to still be having all my needs met in the material form and all that. But like, I'm proud of like hearing that comparison voice and going like, yeah, don't buy it.
Mhm.
Stay the course, brother. Like
Mhm.
you're more present this way to show up and
Yeah, man.
be available for, you know, just to be more cool. And
Yeah.
for me, that takes getting off the habit trail a bit, you know.
Sure. Sure.
So yeah,
Beautiful,
I'm
man.
proud of noticing that, I guess.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. It's a
Mm.
great lesson for me, for everybody. Slow down, observe.
No,
Yeah.
it's just again, it's like for me, like you know, those things. Like I think for some people, it's whatever they don't need it. You know,
Yeah.
it's like great. Like I know lots of people who are like that, and I'm always like, wow, how are you able to do that?
Mm.
For me, it was like it's just not my yeah. Yeah. So I just say that again just because it's like yeah, I don't know. I think some people maybe can identify with that. It's questioning what we value as like achievement,
Yeah.
and if it has to do with keeping up with what works for someone else.
Yeah.
Hmm,
Yeah.
I don't know. It might be more damaging than good.
Yeah. Well, man, I got to tell you, I'm really just so grateful that we had this time together. And I'm going to link up all the things in the show notes for this. And yeah, we'll definitely have to put some time on the calendar in the future to go deep dive into woo woo land, man, because I'm right there with you.
Well, thank you so much for this, Wes. It's been awesome, and time flew by, and
I know.
hopefully there's some nuggets in there for folks.
So many good
I got a
nuggets,
lot out
man.
of it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, man. I look forward to talking to you soon.
Right on.
Thanks, brother.
Take care, man.
You too, man.
Okay.
That's it for this episode of This Life Without Limits. I hope you enjoyed this conversation and will join me again for future episodes. If you want to stay updated on new releases, hit the subscribe button below, and don't forget to check out the show notes for additional details and links. I'd also love to hear what you think about the content of this episode, so please feel welcome to drop any comments, thoughts, questions, critique, any of that below. Thanks again for joining me, and I look forward to next time. Until then, here's to a life without limits, my friends.